slow. All right, Albert,
Yeah.
let's do it. This is Law and Disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
Pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care.
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
Well, let's start in a place far away from Washington and the Supreme Court. The father of the Nashville Waffle House shooter. He gets 18 months in prison. He was convicted of illegally giving his son an assault-style rifle that he later used in a 2018 shooting that killed 4 people at a Waffle House in Tennessee. The judge last May convicted this Jeremy Rinking of illegal delivery of a firearm to a person who had been treated for mental illness within the past 5 years.
Yep.
59 years old, this Rinking is. Gave him 90 days to prepare a likely appeal before he has to report to begin serving his sentence.
What was his excuse? Why did he say he would have given his mentally ill son a weapon?
He said that he didn't know his son had been treated for mental issues at the hospital. That was essentially his defense.
Yeah.
His son, the younger Ranking, had his firearm owner's identification card revoked by Illinois State Police, though. He surrendered his guns to his father, who later returned them to him before the Waffle House shooting. The AR-15 style rifle that he used in that attack was one of the guns that his father returned to him. So he's kind of on thin ice, the father, when he says, I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Because they revoked the guns, you had to give them back to him.
No.
So.
And if your guns have been taken away, they've been taken for a reason. That's baloney.
I've got a lot of January 6th breakthroughs and a major wrinkle in the sentencing of a service member. I mean, it's really kind of chilling. I want to get to that as we continue with Law and Disorder. But first, how about a little Steve Moskowitz? Sting me if you would.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Camera.
While you do that, let me just read this chat text from JR. He says, hey, Mark, I watched the Tucker Carlson latest video excerpts, and I now see January 6th was just a walking tour of the Capitol.
Yeah, who knew?
I mean,
a walking tour of the Capitol where they shot somebody. I mean, you don't have to go any further than that to know it was more than just a walking tour. When you need to shoot somebody to defend a place, I
mean, cops get their arm caught in the door. They get beaten. It's just I mean,
it's an insult to our intelligence, and it's an absolute outrage that this guy could pull this off. Plus, by the way, it may violate all kinds of ethics concerns. Back to some Law and Disorder. Here is a bit on what Tucker did on his show.
Last night, Fox News host Tucker Carlson aired newly released video from the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. The footage was provided exclusively to Carlson by Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Carlson attempting to downplay the violence by showing video of people calmly walking around the Capitol. Tucker was trying to persuade his viewers that while there were some bad apples, most of those there were peaceful. He called them sightseers. Other video that Carlson did not air shows police and rioters engaged in hours of violent combat. More than 100 officers were injured during the attack. In response, Congressman Benny G. Thompson, the former chairman of the January 6th committee, released a statement saying Speaker McCarthy, quote, decided it was more important to give in to a Fox host who spews lies and propaganda than to protect the Capitol and the police, members, and staff that serve in it.
Hey, thanks for watching.
That's it. Thank you, Al. I do think that it's a kind of fiction that's so insulting and so outrageous. That I mean, you've seen wide shots of that. You know, the stuff used by the committee, by the time you got to that, by the way, it was quite revealing, but still, we'd already seen a bunch. We'd seen tons of stuff stitched together by the New Yorker, stitched together by the New York Times, stitched together by the Washington Post. There were all these different news outlets that were able to, I think the LA Times might have even done one. They were able to give you a sense of what was going on there. There was, I feel as though there's no new footage out there. You know, there's no reveal And it's offensive. It's grotesque, and the people involved with it are just that. They're involved in a grotesque, awful thing. I'll give you an example of some of that grotesqueness, if that's a word. A military veteran who allegedly wanted to wipe out Jews, convicted in the Capitol attack now. Hatchet Speed, a former U.S. naval reservist. By the way, the name Hatchet Speed.
That's his name?
Yeah. If you put it in a movie, they would go, nah, that's a little too,
That's too much. Yeah.
Right. Can we count a different name? Hatchet Speed. He's a former U.S. naval reservist. He's accused of telling an undercover FBI agent about his plan to wipe out the nation's Jewish population. He was convicted of storming the U.S. Capitol during that little picnic that Tucker was featuring on his show. That was to stop Congress from certifying President Joe Biden's 2020 electoral victory. A federal judge heard trial testimony without a jury before convicting this Hatchet Speed, the former U.S. naval reservist, who was assigned to an agency that operates spy satellites, by the way. This is not an isolated case. There's the example of 6 guys who were just let go from various nuclear facilities because of things in their background. And also the fact that they failed various tests. He was convicted on all 5 charges in his indictment, including a felony count of obstructing an official proceeding, etc. Speed spewed anti-Semitic rhetoric linked to his dislike for government, according to prosecutors. They said that Speed's hateful ideology helps explain why he joined the Capitol attack. So, again, it's not just that he was racist, anti-Semitic, whatever it was. In this case, anti-Semitic. It's that animated an aspect of his involvement in this whole thing. That's why that's important. Speed, this is a quote, Speed saw the Jews as everywhere, fighting to destroy Christians, and he was not willing to sit by, prosecutors wrote. His own words show the defendant's actions were knowing and willful, the judge said. Anyway, he was at the Stop the Steal rally, and he entered the building through a door to the Senate wing of the Capitol after other rioters had breached it, and he remained inside the Capitol for roughly 40 minutes.
Is anyone surprised that that type of event would draw that type of person?
Exactly. I love that you make that point, because that's sort of what they're saying, that kind of person who is being both given that message and is also regurgitating that kind of message, that's the person who shows up to this kind of thing. So
how long do we know what his sentence was? Was it like 6 months like everyone else?
A good question. Sorry, I just left it.
Because that's the frustrating part, is you see these people egregiously breaking the law who are really rotten. You know, they're rotten people, and they get the slap on the wrist. It's frustrating.
Yeah, it's certainly true. I mean, that these misdemeanors are not. But
it's not enough.
A reference to. I see a reference to. Excuse me for a second while I look. I don't see a reference to what he got. Maybe you can check that, Albert. He was convicted of 4 misdemeanors and for this felony count of obstructing an official proceeding, but there is no listing as to a penalty handed down yet. So maybe that sentence still has to happen. But I mean, is what I would say. I mean, that's the kind of person. And the military scares me a bit because I think it's populated by people, and people believe a lot of BS, you know.
Yep.
And that brings us to, you know, that Tucker Carlson thing again, because that's the dry cleaning of history, right? That is essentially the sanitizing of an awful attempt to overthrow the U.S. government. A lot of these people in court records, in their own words, were there to overthrow the government. They saw it as a civil war. And so the idea somehow that Carlson could sweep it under with a lot of these pieces of video that Kevin McCarthy gave him, on one, this would be laughable were not so many people signing on to it. So, you know, they start by questioning the legitimacy of the 2020 election when there is no evidence for it. Then they continue with various tactical strategies that were going to be employed by the Trump White House, including martial law. They wanted anything to throw off the, if you'll pardon this expression because of Palestine, they wanted to derail the transfer of power such that Trump would have to step in, then it would default to the House, etc.
What did Giuliani say? Anything that will cause confusion, anything that delays, we'll take anything.
So you had the Eastmans of the world, the Sidney Powells of the world, and you had the Giulianis of the world all working on that. It was a real attempted coup. And that Carlson could do this is, it's disgusting. And yet, I mean, there is no bottom for these guys. Meantime, over at Fox, they are having personal cell phones taken from them, many staffers, because they're so worried about various people who work at Fox being subpoenaed and being part of future court cases. So because of the Dominion Voting Systems defamation suit, there is a chill throughout Fox News. I'm looking to see if it was an official memo. This is coming from inside Fox. There are a lot of people who are chatty inside Fox right now. Those working there are saying that people's cell phones and emails are being sifted through. And as the situation gets more serious, there's going to be more of that. So that continues there as well. By the way, Kevin McCarthy may be, I mean, again, it's his own body that has to investigate him. So it's a little like the cops investigate themselves or doctors investigate themselves. It's always questionable, or the military investigating itself. Never a good thing, but it could be a House ethics investigation on the release of those videos to Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
So, meantime, Mike Pence is asking a judge to block his subpoena for January 6th testimony. He's going to go to court over that. Pence is, as you know, running for president, or likely running for president, and he's filed a motion asking a judge to block this federal grand jury subpoena for his testimony related to January 6th. He's saying that he's protected by executive order, really, by executive privilege, excuse me. And he's protected by the Constitution's speech or debate clause. We can ask David K. Johnson, although it's addressed before, has this argument on this show by both David and also by David Katz, the other David. So Mike Pence, good luck with that. I don't see it necessarily as anything that has potential for you. This is a wild story in Law and Disorder out of Texas.
Y'all can go to hell. I'm going back to Texas.
I'm going back to Texas. Texas lawmakers are weighing a bipartisan bill to close a gun background check loophole. This is in Texas, I'll remind you. The bill is by Senator Joan Huffman. It would require courts to report information about involuntary mental health hospitalizations of juveniles aged 16 and older. It passed unanimously out of committee last week with bipartisan backing. It's meant to make the background check more thorough and make our communities and schools safer, said Huffman. Huffman's a Republican, by the way. Huffman sponsored the legislation after an investigation by ProPublica and the Texas Tribune showed that juveniles were being excluded from the National Firearms Background Check System. So this is movement in Texas of a sort, you know.
I think it shows most reasonable people realize that there should be some type of background check for everyone who's trying to get a gun. Everyone.
Well, everyone in America virtually agrees with that. In polling, 90% of Americans, including gun owners, maybe especially gun owners, think there should be background checks. I mean, it seems so disingenuous not to have background checks. 2 Americans kidnapped in Mexico were found dead. 2 found alive, according to Mexican officials. There were 4 of them kidnapped by armed gunmen. The video is chilling. In a phone call with Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, it was played at a news conference. He said that ambulances and security personnel were now attending to and giving medical support to survivors. The 4 Americans were located at what appears to be a medical clinic in Matamoros, a U.S. official familiar with the ongoing investigation was saying that one of the two survivors is severely injured. This is a place in Mexico, I should tell you, and then we'll wrap up. But I do want to mention that the State Department lists as a no-travel zone as so dangerous. So it's unclear what these people were doing. Have you heard? I've heard everything from they were there on a medical mission to...
That's what I heard.
Okay.
It couldn't afford the medication or a medical procedure. So this family traveled over the border to Mexico to have a medical procedure done. And then...
they got lost on the way to the medical clinic is what I was reading.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's a sad ending.
Yeah.
And if, as I say, one is severely injured, one other in the hospital, and two not alive anymore. Sadly, that's Law and Disorder for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on the Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
Be careful out. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.